But we can talk about San Diego.
Yeah, we'll talk about San Diego.
All right, let's go. What's going on with San Diego? Some very exciting news.
Yeah, so MLS is currently at 29 teams, which never makes sense and probably speaks to lack of planning, because why have two uneven conferences and one conference be easier to make the playoffs than the other? Doesn't make sense. So they have made it now 30 teams, 15 in each conference. San Diego will be joining MLS in 2025 season. So not this season, not next season, but the season after that. It was inevitable. There was going to be a San Diego team. The question was who was going to be the ownership. Was it going to be the San Diego Loyal, or was it going to be some new San Diego team? It is going to be some new San Diego team. The ownership here is what I want to talk about, because I think this is very interesting. So Mohamed Mansour, he is the owner, founder, runner of the Mansour Group, which has two very interesting connections to soccer. One is he and his group ended up buying the Right to Dream Academy, which is one of the most dominant and well-known and well-respected youth soccer academies in the world, and it's out of Western Africa. And he is also the owner of FC Nordsjaelland, which is a pretty good club in the top flight of Danish football. So an entry path into Europe, right?
Yeah.
So with him coming into this league, him growing Right to Dream Academy, we're going to see a different profile of player in MLS than we've seen before, right? Like we see a lot of young Hispanic and South American players coming into the league and lighting it up and then going to Europe. But we haven't seen a whole lot of West African players. There's been a few here and there. Who comes to mind for the Sounders. But that's not really a path you've seen. And I think we've spoken about this before. Africa is probably the most underrated soccer continent in the world.
1,000%.
Right? Like the amount of players that come out of there that are just pure world class
every time
is incredible. We're talking Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, like some of the
you can go back to like the Drogba's, Yaya Toure, you know,
and it's just an area that isn't respected in world soccer. You don't see people scouting. You don't see players coming out of very often. But then when you see things like the Club World Cup, an African team is almost always one of the teams in the final against a European team, right? It's not usually a North American team. It's not usually an Asian team. It's not usually a South American team, right? It's almost always an African team or South American.
Yeah. And so to let you know in a little bit, you know, kind of like the situation that was going on with the, was it the Asian team or the Ecuador team that we were covering where the players had like second job and third jobs?
Haitian.
Yeah. So that's the same situation that goes on. So a lot of those players that you guys see play in a World Cup, especially if they play local, they ain't making the type of money that some of their, you know, peers playing in. Like they're not making that, so they probably have like other jobs doing whatever. So when they're playing at the World Cup, it's like those are due to just playing the play. They love to play, but sometimes they don't make enough out of it.
Yeah, and so for how do I put this? So for Western countries and the World Cup, right? They get paid a set amount of money based on your level in the team and the amount of games you played and stuff like that, right? To go play in a World Cup, to play for your country, right? And it's a set amount. There are some scenarios, I'm thinking Senegal is one, if I'm off the top of my head, where it's a bit more corrupt and players have to pay to get into the team.
Bro, everything is corrupt in Africa.
I mean, there's corruption all around the world, right?
So,
but to see it, at the national level in soccer is a bit sad, because that's another reason why you don't see a lot of the phenomenal talents get to Europe and get to the leagues that they make the money, because they're not being given the shot by their own confederation.
Yeah.
Because they're not willing to play the game. I'm thinking Gomez for Liverpool, the center back. I think he's Senegalese. I can't remember. But he refuses to play for his country because of the corruption.
Yeah.
He said, I'm just not going to do it. And it's sad when you do, because when you watch a World Cup, you want to see some of the best teams in the world, right? And you want to see some of the best players in the world. You want to see some of the best young players in the world.
So throwing this at you, like the France national team, 80% African.
Maybe even 90, right? But it's all those players that were at the highest level
in French.
And they just decided that they're not making the money, and they're not going to want to pay to play for their national team, so they take their second citizenship.
Yeah. So
I guarantee you, almost all of those players would rather play for their actual homeland, right?
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't want to play for France if they were being treated correctly.
So this is the thing, is like usually with us, like even me being here in America, bro, when you make it out, you got responsibilities. You got people you got to take care of. So if France playing for France or whatever country I'm in is going to be able to, help me take care of what I need to take care of at home, who cares? Because the thing about it is that like we don't even have like Hall of Fame stuff back in Africa. Like if you play for your country, your name is not remembered like that. Nobody cares about you, man. It's like,
unless you are like a Drogba.
Yeah, unless you that is because you're giving back. It's not, they're not appreciating what you've done. It's just because you give back, and it's like, oh, you're such a figure. That's what it is.
Drogba is like considered to have stopped a civil war in the Ivory Coast just because of who he is, and he went in and talked to the leaders of the two different armies, and
very well respected.
Like just literally stopped a war.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but I know he's very well respected. Him and Samuel Eto'o, very well respected everywhere they go in Africa. Very well respected. So, yeah, but let's move on. Unless you want to keep talking about this.
Well, so I want.
Oh yeah,
we were talking about the right to dream. We got on a tangent.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I was like the ownership. We're not done talking about that.
But the Mansour Group is going to give a different path to West African players than we've seen before, and that is going to be really interesting. Not only is San Diego in one of the most talent-rich areas. Man, why are you talking right now?
Bro, she's all over me. I'm just trying to move her.
Your mic's going to pick that up. Not only is San Diego one of the most talent-rich areas in the country, but to be able to pull from other countries that are untapped, right? Like there aren't players coming out of those countries on a regular basis. And this is just going to give that new San Diego team an absolute platform to build off of, right? And have success out the gate. And it'll be very interesting to see how their pathway is formed. Will the players come to San Diego and then go to Nordsjaelland and then get into a top 5 league in Europe? Will some of the players just go straight from the MLS to the top 5 league in Europe? Will some players from Nordsjaelland come to the MLS team, right? Like, it's very interesting to see what this pathway will look like for San Diego. But the one thing that's for sure is that it's going to be something we haven't seen in MLS before. And I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
And speaking of something that we haven't seen before, it's not just the Mansour Group and the Mansour family that are doing this, right? So the Mansours have partnered with the Sikwan band of the Kumeyaay Nation, so Native American tribe and nation. Let me ask you a question. When you think of sports ownerships, what do you think of in America?
Like about like
who owns teams in America?
Caucasians,
rich old white men.
Yes,
right. Like
That was the best way I could.
right? Like that's fair, right? Rich old white guys.
Yeah.
Now we are
Mark
seeing,
Cuban and then,
now
you
we
know.
are seeing an Egyptian in the Mansour come in, and he is partnering with a native tribe and nation, right? Which is, again, just opening pathways here. The Sequan band here, they are the second group of native people to own a sports franchise, professional sports franchise in America, right? The first one, I want to make sure I'm getting the pronunciations here right. The first one is the Mohegan tribe, and they own a WNBA team and a professional lacrosse team.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we're seeing a native tribe come in and own a top 5 league team, right? Like, this is just cool. Like, we're seeing diversity in the league. We're seeing diversity in the sport. We're going to see different pathways for players that haven't been given opportunities to perform. I'm very excited to see what the San Diego product ends up looking like. And I hope that we can make it out to the first game in 2025, wherever that will be. But I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in San Diego. I think it's going to be a great franchise out the gate. They have the money they need. They clearly have the soccer passion and ownership you need. As you see owners come in with a lot of money and spend, but they don't care about the sport and they don't know about the sport and they just spend their money irresponsibly. FC Cincinnati, for instance, for their first 3 years in existence in MLS. So to have an owner that is passionate about soccer, like Mohamed Mansour, right? To have an owner that knows the sport and is one of the richest people in the world, that's a good combination for success there. So very excited to see what happens in MLS.
I think they're going to kind of come out and be like St. Louis. That's what I'm expecting.
For sure. If they're a team that comes out, especially in the region of the world they are in San Diego, which is just a soccer mad area, if they come out and they don't make the playoffs, that's a horrible failure.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we've established that. Horrible failure. That's a little harsh. I mean,
It's not.
I won't say horrible failure. It'll be their first year in the league.
When you have an owner that already has another team, already has what is essentially a youth academy,
he's not going to transfer the kids or that team's player. It could, but it's not going to work like that.
It's a better starting level than it was. Having the Right to Dream Academy is a massive step up.
Maybe for the future.
No, for MLS or for the starting gates in general. Think how many teams start with a youth academy. Very, very few. And the ones that do, they end up doing very well in the league. Having an academy, an already proven academy that has kids coming up and going into
how far is that academy?
I mean, they have branches all across the world.
Oh, okay.
It's headquartered out of
Central.
Somewhere in Africa.
Yeah.
I think it's Egypt. I could be wrong there.
Yeah, they got some ballers over there in Egypt. Sandy, get there.
Yeah, they have regions all across the world, including I think on the East Coast.
All right. Awesome. Well, that covers that all.